Okay, we're doing something a little bit different this fall on the Gravity Podcast. We're launching a series featuring interviews with the experts from our Grow Transformational Wellness Program, exclusively for residents of our greenhouse community. The year-long program is made up of monthly learnings designed to help residents build habits for a better life. Each month, a new wellness topic is introduced by an expert in that area. I'm excited for you to hear from each guest on their journey to becoming an expert and finding their passion for helping others through wellness practice. Tune in this fall to hear their inspiring stories. For more information on the Grow program, visit livinggreenhouse.com. As I said, this program is exclusively for our greenhouse residents today. So please, if you have somebody that's interested in looking for a community like Greenhouse, please check out the website and shoot us a note if this is something that you'd like to learn more about as a non-resident. We're also considering potentially over time expanding this program outside of the physical community and into our virtual community as well. So enjoy our guests, our experts, and check us out at livinggreenhouse.com. Okay, today's guest on the Gravity Podcast is my dear friend, Kate Borges. Kate is the owner of the Massage Garage in Bexley. As a licensed massage therapist, Kate discovered her passion for wellness and now offers treatments to her community, including sauna therapy and cold plunges. Kate's business goes beyond novelty to coach her clients through hot and cold therapy and achieving the many health benefits associated with the practice. Kate's journey to becoming a wellness provider is an interesting one, and we'll discuss how she's turned her passion project into a thriving business to support her family. Kate is also the hot and cold therapy and natural light therapy expert for the Grow Transformational Wellness Program at our greenhouse community. Kate introduces our residents to hot and cold therapy and provides coaching to help turn these therapies into a daily practice. I've known Kate for a while now and have really watched her build this business. And it's been inspiring to watch. She's really connecting with people. She's offering, like I said, way more than just a trend. It's really techniques that you can take into your life, that you can use outside of the cold, outside of the heat, and really take the lessons to grow yourself mentally and physically. And that's what she's done for herself personally. She's overcome a tremendous amount, which we will talk about. But just really great to be with Kate and to have this conversation and to share with you. We're here with Kate Borges. Kate, thanks for coming on. It's great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
I have really enjoyed spending time with you, getting to know you. I love what you've built. I was telling you yesterday, it's just like really beautiful. And I love seeing that like it's become really well known around the city. You've got like all these awesome people who know about you and have discovered the Massage Garage, which, you know, I knew you before, and watching it all evolve is just awesome. I love seeing it. So anyway, it's great to have a chance to see outside the garage and to talk and share maybe more of your journey than what people know.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's been an evolution, a lot of just head down walking forward, and then all of a sudden you lift your head up and like, oh my gosh, look at this.
Yeah. Look
at the people that are coming. And earlier today, I had a call from a woman from Akron that wants to come down and see what I've built here in Columbus. I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. She's like, I don't know. You just keep popping up on my feed. I think I'm meant to meet you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like, well, that's exactly why I'm doing this. So
yeah.
Fantastic, universe. Thank you.
Yeah. It's interesting because just watching like this part of your journey and seeing how you have like grown the business itself, which watching it like happen, my observation of it was like it was very just sort of organic in that like you took another step and then you took another step, and you took and maybe it's even evolved in ways that you had no intention of or never imagined, right? But like, and I think that's why I like the whole journey, because people just see the end product, right? So a woman comes in from Akron, she walks into your backyard and she sees like this beautiful thing that could be anywhere, right? But I've watched like mirror by mirror and plant by plant and, you know, freezer by freezer and then the mural and the things, right? Like, and it was all just one step at a time.
Yeah. And like almost like, okay, I'm here, and like, okay, I'm bored. What's next? What can we bring in? Oh, we're going to add this. Okay, that seems to work great. Let's do more and more. And it's all things that I love. And that's what I think the only common bond, because a lot of the things are really kind of kooky and out there, but it's all things that I love. And then when people walk into it, you can see people walking up the driveway and their shoulder starts coming down and their breath starts getting bigger and they start getting a smile on their face. And it's incredible to see. And I think it's maybe even unbeknownst to me as it started, it just was like a labor from my heart, and my heart just like, this is what I love. This is what we're going to do. People will like it or else they won't. And, you know, occasionally there's somebody who doesn't come back. Not often, but that's okay.
Yeah, I actually was just listening to John Mackey, who's the founder of Whole Foods. He was on Rich Roll's podcast, and I'm reading his book. And again, this is kind of why I like to share these stories, because, you know, he was just like this hippie grocer, right? And then he started like doing one thing and then another thing, and like never imagined it was going to be Whole Foods and then Amazon and right. And, you know, I kind of think the approach to business is undervalued in what you just described, right? That like, these are just things you love, right? And if you love them and want to share them, there's a good chance other people love them. And if they love them enough and they're getting value from them, they're probably going to pay for them, right? And then now you have a business, and that business is rooted in like passion and your own experience, and you use your intellect, right? And you grind, and it's hard, right? And, you know, you're out there, you know, plucking ice, and, right? Like, it's hard, but it's filled with love and passion, and that's good business, right? And I think, you know, a lot of people thinking like, oh, business school, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good at business, but you know, really, it's just about sharing yourself with passion and hard work.
I would definitely put myself in the category at not good at business, and because it's not really what drives me, or something I never thought that I would be good at. And here I am with my own business. I learned maybe from my father that in life we have these convincing experiences. And sometimes they're just the most mundane, stupid little thing. But it's a convincing experience where you're like, I don't know what's next, but it's better than where I am right now. And sometimes this little thing makes a switch and you just go in a new direction. Mm-hmm. There's things that I've brought into Massage Grads that aren't hugely successful, but they're enough successful that they keep people interested. Mm-hmm. And my stretching wall, you've seen the stretching wall, it holds 6 people. It was like probably the second biggest expense in the garage, wildly underused. I had it installed. I did it after taking 2 classes on a wall like that in a gym that no longer exists in Columbus. Mm-hmm. Maybe not the best business decision if you're in business, but I do love it and I use it all the time. And I think it will catch on at some point. But yeah, if you love it, even if it doesn't make the most sense, sometimes it'll work too.
Yeah, and you also just have to try things to see what does work. But you mentioned your dad. Let's go back and talk about your early childhood, your family. Tell me a little bit about kind of, you know, let's kind of put the pull on the threads that got you here.
All right. So I'm an only child, and my mother and father were the sinner and saint. My mother was the kindergarten teacher, PTA president, like pillar of the community, built a new library, like just amazing, a saint. My father was a free spirit and kind of marched to his own beat. And, it was a small town and he had a lot of skeletons, and it kept him he was very smart, and he was an inventor, and he had a number of patents, and he also had these skeletons that just kept him unable to take the next step.
Did you, and now I know you know that now, but when you were a kid, how did that impact you? What did you notice?
My dad loved me more than anything, and he didn't know how, and he'd be the first person to tell you that. I don't know why I have to tell this story, but I have to tell this story. I was 9 years old, right? We lived in the country. I lived in Western New York, south of Buffalo, a ski resort town. So it's beautiful. Tons of things to do in the winter, not much to do in the summer. I was 9 years old. I wanted a horse, right? Every little girl wants a horse. We lived like kind of in the woods. We had a barn on our land, and so my dad got me a horse for the summer, just like every 9-year-old girl's dream. This horse had been wild in a field for like 3 years because its owner was in the military. And my dad, being the like bootstrap guy that he is, just rode it home from this farm like 10 miles away, just like took off over a hill and rode this horse. And he rode it home, and I was so excited, my horse, and I'm standing on the front porch of the house, and I've got my horse, and the horse reaches up and bites me right in the butt, like takes a chunk, which set the tone for the summer of me owning this horse and brushing the horse and taking care of the horse. And every day the horse would run off into the woods and knock me off, and I'd spend the rest of the day dragging the horse home. Kind of lost my love and feeling for horses. And the summer's coming around, and we were at like a family gathering. We get home, and my father had too much to drink, and so my mother would not let him have the keys to the car. So my dad saddles up the horse and rides it to town. And there's a bar in town called a barn, built from an old barn. So as legend goes in our small town, my dad rides the horse into the barn. He's sitting on the back. The horse is eating nuts off the bar. Wonderful. My dad comes out to go down to the next bar, and the horse of course goes nuts like it has all summer. And my dad gets hurt, and the small town we live in, the chief of police lived across the street, so they came and got me and my mom. My mom and my dad went to the hospital, and I, at 9 years old, ride the horse home at 3 o'clock in the morning in my pajamas. The next day the horse went back to the farm. My dad wanted the best for me. He wanted to make my dreams come true about having a horse. He just didn't really know how to make that happen.
What was that then like for you? I mean, you're a 9-year-old kid. I mean, did you just sort of continue to go about life, with what you had? And
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in such a small town. Like my kindergarten teacher, my father had, and my grandfather had. Everybody knew everybody. It's like a little microcosm. So everybody.
Was that good or bad for you?
Both.
Yeah.
Both because my mom was an angel and everybody loved my mom, so everybody loved me. And my dad was, for all of his failings, he also was full of energy and excitement and lended a lot to the community. I mean, everybody loves that story. It's a great story.
Yeah.
Except for if you're the 9-year-old riding the horse home at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
When I was a senior in high school, my father went off the grid and went and lived on a sailboat that he had spent the previous 3 years rebuilding. And that was interesting. And he was 46 at that time, and he went off the grid, and everybody, he's crazy. And then he died when he was 53, a heart attack in his sleep. And then everyone says, thank God he did what he wanted to do. So I guess it doesn't really matter all the things he did, but that's the point. At 53, when it was over, thank God he did what he wanted to do.
Yeah, well, let me go back. So, tell me a little bit about you, more about you. So, you have, I see, the father and, the saint and the sinner. I get, kind of the role modeling and the experience, to some degree. But what were you like? What were you into? Kind of what was going on in your world in those, kind of early years, high school years? Like, what kind of person were you?
I love to ski. Started skiing when I was 3. Wasn't allowed to ski at the resort till I was 5. we would ski every day after school. I mean, my first job, I was a ski instructor. That's what we did there. I graduated with 64 kids, the same kids I started kindergarten with.
What was the mountain?
Holiday Valley.
Oh, Holiday Valley. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So spending your whole life with the same 64 kids, it was kind of, it was too small. Mm-hmm. I wanted more. I wanted to get out. I couldn't wait to leave. I couldn't wait to get out. And I loved skiing because I would go by myself and I would meet people on the chairlift all the time, and people that lived in Ohio or in Canada that had houses and that come and ski. I couldn't wait for my winter friends to come because they were outside of this little tiny town that I was just stuck in, mm-hmm. which is a lot what my father wanted more and wanted bigger, and he just never left. And my mom loved her community and loved building community, and my mom was the grind. My mom was the just do it every day and loved doing it. So I'd like to think I pulled both of those things together now. Probably when I was younger, I didn't always, I was wildly flawed. Wildly flawed.
How so? Tell me about that wildly flawed part.
Yeah, skiing was a great way to, there were cigarette machines when we were that age. Mm-hmm. We used to play this game. We all wore backpacks when we'd ski. And there's, condos right along the ski hill. So one person would go up to all of the decks and throw 2 beers from each deck into then the other person would gather them all up, and you'd get a case of beer. Nobody would notice 2 beers. Yeah. So, that's what we did.
Right. Yeah.
Like kids do, right. Especially kids back then.
Sure.
Back then, smoking and drinking wasn't bad for you.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's just sort of even still, I think, what kids are doing,
Sure.
So I get it. But it was all within the range of sort of normal,
normal angst.
Right.
I had a flat top, one haircut when I was bleaching and buttons all over. I mean, in a small town, I was probably one of the more extreme personalities.
Yeah. Okay. So then what? Tell me, where do you go from? How old were you when your father passed away?
I was 25.
Okay, so
I was married. I was married. I was married to my practice husband, but no kids yet.
Okay, so practice husband. That's funny. Okay, so you do you leave? You go away?
Left. I went. My freshman year of college, I went to Buffalo. I went to school in Buffalo because my high school boyfriend went to school in Buffalo too. He went to Canisius, and I went to DeUville, who used to be brother and sister school. And I just needed to get out. And so then I transferred to Bowling Green in Ohio. And I came to Bowling Green and never went back. I mean, went back to visit, but never went back.
And you met your practice husband there?
Yes.
Okay. And so you get married.
Yeah. I was kind of crazy. I mean, we got married on spring break in Mexico, and we were married for 10 years, 2 kids. It was a good run, but we went to Mexico and thought that would be a really great souvenir. Get married down here,
right?
And then they're like, "Oh no, legal all over the world." And we're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how we do all of these really important things when we're least prepared to do that. But I guess, spring break, anything could happen.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So you were married 10 years though.
Yeah.
So that's a little more than a practice.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the term, but usually you hear starter marriage, it's 2 years, no kids.
I see.
But maybe that's different than practice.
Maybe also, it takes me a lot to learn my lessons. So it just took 10 years to learn all I needed to learn before it was time to go on.
And what were you doing in that first 10 years? Were you working? Were you a stay-at-home mom? What was life like for you then?
So I worked out of college. I worked at Franklin Park Conservatory. My degree in college was recreational programming, leisure wellness. And why, you might ask? Because it was the lowest GPA that I needed to graduate. And so that's why I did that. And
fair enough.
It worked.
Yep. And I was not looking for any advanced degrees myself, so I get it.
And it was things that I like to do. I mean, I got to take a skiing class, so awesome. Why not? Yeah. So I worked at Nationwide Insurance, mutual fund trading, and then we had kids, and then I stayed home, and I was always young and active. I was always active when I was young. Skiing, hiking, biking, all that kind of stuff. I went to college, and also my mom was a terrible cook. And so you didn't eat for pleasure. You ate because you were starving. I went to college and I started to blossom. And by the time I reached like my peak, I was about 225. This was like after kids, but I was considerably larger than I had been in my entire life. I was really excelling in sloth and gluttony at that point in my life. And I knew better because I had these two little boys and I couldn't keep up with them. And so...
Well, what was going on there? I'm just curious, like in hindsight, why?
My practice husband was a Division I football player. And when we finished college, like that intensity went to sloth and gluttony.
I see.
And I shouldn't say him. I don't want to... He's fine. I'm an intense person. I have an addicted personality. And one thing I've noticed across life is my addictions just change. And when I'm in something, I'm all in.
Yeah.
And so for that period of time, I was all into...
Food was your drug.
Yeah. Movie and dinner, and we'd make things and like, bigger, better, more.
Got it. And it just
and then
continued to snowball.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I started probably my first like conscious health and wellness journey. And I lost like 100 pounds in like a year. And that was like the first big change. And my joke was I lost 100 pounds, then 450 my ex-husband. It wasn't something that enriched our relationship. It's something that drove us apart.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. That's interesting. Oftentimes that's what happens when, somebody's changing. It can either bring you together or drive you apart.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. So, so then what? You're divorced.
Yep.
Your father passed, and you've lost this weight.
Yep.
Where are you in life?
So, I got like my first apartment. I lived in Westerville, and the boys lived with me like every other weekend. And, I was working at Lifetime Fitness selling memberships, and I hated it. And one morning I lived like near Old Town Westerville.
Okay.
And so one day I was walking or running probably around, and there's a bike shop. And I go and I was big into spinning at this point. And so I go into the bike shop. I'm like, "Are you hiring?" And he's like, I don't know, maybe. And he's like, "Well, why don't you come in and put a bike together? We'll see how mechanically inclined you are." And I was like, "All right." So I went and quit my job. And then I showed up the next day at the bike shop, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm here for the job." And he was like, "What?" He's like, "All right, well, there's bikes in the basement. Go put one together and we'll see." And so I worked for like a year and a half in a bike shop, just learning how to wrench on bikes. Because I liked it, because it was fun, because I was starting to cycle and actually ride bikes outside. I started spinning, and then I started actually riding bikes outside, and it was a whole new life. My oldest son, now 28, wanted to start racing BMX bikes. And so we got him a bike, got him out there on the track, and then I didn't know what to yell at him. So I started racing. So then I would know what to yell at him. And so then there was a chunk of time when I was like all in on BMX racing.
Yeah.
As in my 30s, a nationally ranked BMX racer. I mean, who the heck cares? But it was awesome. It's so much fun.
It's really cool. I think it's awesome. I mean, I used to like a BMX bike myself. I never raced, but I would have liked to. It was pretty cool, but you actually did it.
Yeah.
You went that far with it.
Yeah. Let me put some parentheses around the dubiousness of BMX racing. It's a point system.
Yeah.
And you get points from races you go to. And so you just pay to go to races.
Gotcha.
So I think my fourth ever race, I went to the Grands. So people like race all year to make it to the Grands.
Yeah.
Well, anybody can go to the Grands. You just sign up.
Yeah.
So I was at the Grands, and there's not that many racers across the country, women in my age group.
Yeah.
I mean, a 34-year-old national BMX racer, I think there were 6 of us.
Yeah.
And I wasn't last.
Yeah.
So
Fine. I mean, you didn't have to tell that part of the story. We were all impressed at nationally BMX ranked 30 something. So, okay. So I get it. Like you take on things, you go all in, you get excited. And so, I know you're not racing bikes today. What was the next thing?
I think I started road riding, then BMX racing, then mountain biking. And taught spinning, and then was really focused on racing the boys. I mean, I was lucky that I had the boys every other week, and when they were with me, we were just all in. I'd pick them up from school, and we just ran till they dropped, and then put them to sleep. And we had the best times in the woods and doing crazy stuff, and it was just awesome.
Yeah.
It was great. And then, and then their sports, and then you start their sports. And I had started massage school after my health and wellness journey started, before I was divorced. So in that range, I started massage school. And massage school was something that it was one of those convincing experiences. I don't even know why. I don't even know how I ended up in class. And I remember the first week of class sitting there thinking, why am I here? I don't like touching people. I'm not a hugger. Like, what? I don't get this. And then when we started laying hands on people, and I started realizing the power of that and how it came to me naturally, I was like, oh, okay, this is something I'm supposed to do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But it took you a while to really lean into doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking back at it, I have like a lot of theories about that. Healing energy and sexual energy are very similar energies, and you have to be really intentful on what you're using. I think I wasn't dialed in enough to the healing part of that energy to be as effective as I needed to be in what I was doing. So I was okay at it, but I wasn't good at it. I wasn't great at it.
Okay, let me tell you what I hear when you say that you were like holding back on the healing energy because you were confusing it with sexual energy, right? So it's not that you're like, if anything, it's not like you're going too far. You were holding back.
So when I started at massage school, all of a sudden I started being able to feel whoever I was working on. I started being able to feel their pain in my body, and that it's really cool. There's like, oh, that's awesome, and it's exhausting, and you can't. It's not sustainable. So, and I didn't have enough knowledge at that time to know that I was able to shut that off. Or I knew I could shut it off. I didn't know how I could go back and forth. Right. Yeah. I just was like, okay, I got that to stop.
I see.
So that kind of, then like the barrier was up because that's how, like, now looking back on it, that's what I had to do to preserve myself.
Yeah.
That barrier was up. So not wanting to tread into a place that I didn't want to be also kept me out of the healing space of that.
I see.
So you couldn't do it as well as I would have wanted to do.
Is it, this is maybe like nuanced, but like, is it really like a intentionality that like comes through in energy that is the difference of being able to give yourself fully as a healer and having it totally stop there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it has to be very the intentionalness of it becomes more automatic the more you do it. It
just becomes your being.
Yeah.
It's just
from the space.
Automatic.
From
right.
like when you walk into, from the space, from how you carry yourself.
Yeah. Interesting. I've never thought about that, but it makes sense. Okay. So at what point do you start to practice then being a masseuse?
So I graduated from massage school, and I went and I took the test and I passed and I got my license. When I called my boys that day, I'm like crying, and they're like, "Mom, what's going on?" And I'm like, "I passed my boards.
Yeah.
I got my license."
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Got
awesome.
it. Okay. That's cool. You mentioned Matt. So when do you then get remarried? Where are you in the journey when Matt comes into your life?
So I teaching spinning at the athletic club. And I taught spinning there for like 18 years, like a long time. And I loved teaching spinning there. It was great. It's a great room. It's a great atmosphere, great clients. It was awesome. And he comes in one day and I didn't recognize him. So I went up to try to like get his bike set up and stuff. And I was like, whoa, I could not annoy this dude anymore. He is really annoyed with me. And start the class, and then like he leaves partway through the class. I'm like, oh, okay, there's not someone else who's never coming back. And then he came back and would come back occasionally. And then one time after class, so here's kind of where our stories diverge if we ever get a chance to ask him these questions. I hear him say, great class, except for the music. Now, I prided myself on my music. So I got his phone number for membership, and I texted, if you have any music recommendations, I'd love to hear it. Jackass.
Yeah, got it. I'm definitely going to have Matt on and ask him about that specifically.
Because I am right. That is what happened. And so then he
You just
started,
have like different musical taste?
well, he says he never said that.
Okay.
He kind of,
We have selective memory. Yeah.
and so he would send me songs and I'd put them in my playlist, and then more and more songs, and he'd come back more and more. And then I had a girlfriend who was turning 40 and wanted to go to Scully's Ladies 80s. And she lived in New Albany, and she's like, well, I'll dress up. And I'm like, I don't know if people really dress up like at Scully's Ladies 80s.
Yeah.
And I knew he lived like downtown, like, so he was hip. And I was like, texted him, I'm like, do you know if people dress up for Scully's Ladies 80s? He's like, yeah, I'll be there. I'm like, oh, what are the chances? So I tell my friend, yeah. And then Matt shows up. His version is that I invited him. I literally did not invite him. I just wanted to know if people actually dressed up.
I mean, in his defense, it might have felt like you were dangling at that in case he maybe wanted to show up. I mean, it's not a stretch. We can agree to disagree, but I'm sort of team Matt here.
What?
Yeah. Okay. So I got it. Ladies 80s.
Ladies 80s.
Scully's. Who knew? I mean, I met Katie at BW3, so I can't really give you too much shit about that. But okay. And that was what year?
28.
Got it. Okay.
Maybe. Yeah.
So you're working, you're doing spinning, massage, you meet
personal
Matt.
training. Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys end up obviously falling in love, getting married.
Yep.
And
Having Lucas.
Yep.
We got married. I turned 40 and had Lucas all within 6 months.
Wow.
It was a busy time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And the boys were teenagers at that time, going to starting high school, middle school. So there was a lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just kind of tell me about how, life continues to unfold for you.
At that point, I'm back to stay-at-home momming, teenagers and the baby, and, Matt's really busy and he's, traveling and doing his thing. And then he became chairman. I don't know why I don't remember the exact year. Anyways, he became chairman, so it was just bigger and more. And, life reached a different level of balance along the way too. When Matt became chairman, he quit drinking that day. When he won the vote that day, he quit drinking that day. He said, all of the statewide office holders signed a letter to support me. This is something I have to be responsible about. And so he quit that drinking, and to this day hadn't drank. It took me about 6 months. And then I quit drinking too. We were both all-stars, and we both were all in when we were all in. And I needed a little more help than he did. He just made up his mind and quit. I needed a little bit more help, but did.
What did that look like for you?
It was a 3-day stay in a residential treatment plan, and then it was like about a 6 week outpatient, kind of recalibration. I don't fancy myself. I don't use the term alcoholic. I definitely misused alcohol. And when I was in that treatment plan, I started taking Wellbutrin for depression. So it was a case, I don't, it was self-medicating. I for sure was self-medicating. Once I got on actual medication, I didn't need to self-medicate anymore. And in my addictive personality, that's something I've always been able to do when it's time to change addictions. I just change.
Yeah.
I just upgraded it to something else. Going from 225 pounds to a normal weight. I just changed.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't do that. I quit smoking in the middle of my divorce. You know, that's one of the gifts that my brain gave me.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're like what they call like better, worst habit, right? So if your, addiction goes from, eating to spinning, it's certainly improved.
Right.
And there's always danger in over exercise or, being too focused on your weight or, obsessive in other ways. But
Matt
you're
also
upgrading.
says that my short attention span is good for that.
Yeah.
Because I have a short attention span, so I don't ever actually take anything too far.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so Matt's chairman. You both get sober.
We're doing good things. We're both like, we're doing the best. We're doing good. We're doing good things. We're going to sleep at night proud of how we spend our days. We're the boys are doing great and finishing high school and headed to college. And Lucas was almost 3 when he was diagnosed with autism. And I had stopped drinking about 4 months before that. And I thank the universe for that immensely, because if I had maintained alcohol as a coping mechanism when we got that news, who knows where it would have gone.
Yeah,
so
sure.
super thankful of the universe and the timing in that.
Yeah.
And, when we got the diagnosis, I was like, all right, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
This is the third. So, and I thank the universe for that too, because, the first comes along and my first is amazing, but it shatters all your hopes and dreams. You're not raising a president,
Yeah. Yeah.
So now by the time the third comes around, you're like, oh, it doesn't really have that much to do for me with me. He's going to be what he's going to be.
Yeah. And you might not be raising a president because you might not be that good at raising a child. Right. I mean,
for
not
sure.
you in particular, but like, shit,
I made all the mistakes on the first one.
Right. So, okay.
God love him.
Yeah. So you get that news, you're better prepared to deal with it.
Yeah. And it really, my mom, sometimes when I would talk about going through hard things and I would say, it was good. It was fun. And my mom would be like, don't say that. People are going to think you're an idiot. Childbirth. I'm like, my childbirths were great. She's like, oh, don't say that. People are going to think you're an idiot. When we found out Lucas was autistic, we just thought he was spoiled because he was being raised with 4 adults. And it was like, oh, okay. Now we've got to go all these therapies, and what more fun thing to do than learn how to communicate with your child? I'm like, at 3 years old, we're learning how to tackle this problem together. When we get to when he's a teenager, think of the problems we can tackle together.
Yeah.
It was great.
Now he's micro famous.
Now he is a micro celebrity.
Sorry, micro celebrity. I love that. I told Katie that last night. Lucas, shout out to Lucas. He's a micro celebrity. I'm hoping I can pick up some of his followers. Okay, so you're rolling with it.
Yeah.
Seems like something that you learned to do at a young age, and you kind of have a good attitude about it, right? You just kind of take it as it comes and you roll with it and try to make the best of it.
And Matt too. And it was like, we have this beautiful creature, and whatever he wanted, the autism diagnosis gave us permission to just dive in and follow his brain wherever it led us, and then pull him back to reality and see it together. And so, I mean, from one year we had a Helen Keller birthday party because he was super into Helen Keller, and like, we found whatever he's into, we followed him all in. I mean, Matt was in a number of different plays with him. Matt, the chairman, is a backup dancer at the community talent show.
It's good dad. Just being a good dad.
Whatever he wants, we're there. We're like, yeah, we'll do it. Yep. That's what you're into it. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
And it was fun. And we're going along. I mean, I don't know how in the weeds you want to get with this. Karen and John Kasich were friends of mine before I even knew Matt. Where one of the places where I was teaching spinning and doing personal training, they were members there. So I got to know them before I even knew Matt, before I knew that John Kasich was going to be running for governor. So that was, I've always been big fans of theirs, and they've always been very kind to me. And Matt was a big part of announcing Kasich's run for governor. And then, during that process, I was never into politics. I never even voted until I met Matt. And at that point, it was like, oh, I know politicians because they're our friends. And I was like, yeah, they're great. And the first time I voted was 2010, and the Republicans won everything. And I was like, this is awesome. Look, the first time I ever vote and we win everything. This is great.
Yeah.
And Matt's like, sweets, it's not always going to be like this. And so Matt becomes chairman through that process. Sorry, I'm going out of. So Matt's chairman. Kasich announces for president, and wouldn't that have been awesome, especially where we are now? And as a joke to one of the reporters, Matt tells a reporter that I am not allowing him to have a Trump sign in the yard, and it picks up traction, and then a bunch of news outlets cover this, and a news crew came to our house to watch the debate between when Kasich was still in the running and Trump was in it. And this was after Trump made fun of the reporter that was disabled, and after the grab him in the comments came out. And I was not a Trump fan before that, but that like solidified it. I think because Matt being chairman of the Republican Party, it was for a minute there, it was like, well, we got to give him a chance. And then it just got worse and worse. And I was like, I don't have to give him a chance at all. But so then there was this big article about Matt, the chairman, and me, his wife, not supporting Donald Trump. And it was about, I don't know, 7 days after that Trump censored Matt as chairman. And that started the rift, if you will, with Trump and Matt. And Matt had called him and asked him to not run for president, to step down after the grab him in the pussy tapes. And that's kind of where that started. And fast forward, Trump wins. Matt's up for re-election as chairman, and Trump came out against him. And in an unprecedented manner, the president of the United States in the time of transition calls 60 people in the state of Ohio to oust the chairman. That was kind of unheard of, but that happened. And we were like, okay, phew. That was, I remember walking out of that vote, and it was a very cantankerous day, and it was polarizing, and it was sad to watch. But we walked out, we were holding hands, and I remember walking out of the building thinking, thank God. Who wants to spend the next whatever chunk of time defending Donald Trump? I didn't. I didn't want to be a part of it. I felt like that was going to be something that was going to totally disintegrate our family. And Matt was okay with it too. Chairman is an awful job. Chairman is a fundraiser. It's an awful, and I don't know. Anyways, it was over.
But that's important, because I know as you go to the next part of this, and we don't have to talk about, Matt, I do hope someday soon, I'll talk to Matt about all this, but, it's a part of your journey too. So, obviously it's well documented, Matt ends up, in a really difficult situation. I'll let you kind of share what you want to share about that.
So it was the summer of 2020, like kind of the thick of COVID. And my mother lived with us at this point. She was in late stages of Alzheimer's. So we had moved her in, and there was, Lucas and Matt and I and my mom, and we're living through COVID and feeling very lucky that Matt was already kind of a work from home person. This really didn't change our life. This kind of made our life better, because we were just all home together having so much fun. We did so many puzzles. We did it was, I don't want to say we were enjoying it, but we were. And we get there's a knock on the door early in the morning, like 6. And I'm like trying to wake up and what's going on? And I go downstairs, and it's not the first time that's happened, because cars get broken into a lot on the street that we live, and we've had the police knock on our door to be like, hey, we've caught this guy going through your car. And I'm like, oh geez, the cars, or maybe the dog got out, or maybe my mom is out. And I go down and I open the door, and there's a guy in an FBI jacket, and there's like all these people, and they're like loud, and he was like, FBI. And I was like, come on in, like you're gonna wake the neighbors up, like what is going on? And he was like, and they wanted Matt, and I was like, okay, I'll get him, come. I mean, no way, shape, or form are we like expecting this or thinking it was even in the realm of possibility. And so I go, I'm like yelling up, and like, Matt, the FBI's here. And he's like, what? Okay. So we come down, and they take him, and they handcuff him, and they put him in the car, and they won't tell us why. And they did say he'll be home this afternoon. They're like, he'll be home today. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, man, this politics stuff is really weird. I never expected this, but I also just thought it was like a mistake. Okay, so this happens, and I asked what do I do? He's like, call the lawyer. I'm like, okay. So I call the lawyer. Well, I'm standing on the front porch as this caravan of cars are pulling away, and I hear like the speaker on the lead car saying, suspect in custody, Matt Borges, complainant, the president. So I'm like, oh, okay. A month before this, Matt had launched his pact, Republicans for Biden. So I'm like, okay, that's what this is about. So I call the lawyer, and slowly things are trickling out, because 5 people across the state were all arrested at the same time. So slowly things are trickling out, and people start calling, and I was really literally like, yeah, the FBI came and took him away. He'll be back this afternoon. We'll just get this figured out. Like, we just got to explain our side of the story. It's going to be fine. And it wasn't. It was never fine again.
I want you to kind of share like what jumps out to you as like most important about, kind of what happened from that day to where you are today. We don't have to talk about like every ounce of it. I mean, I've been around you for all of it. So I've seen, kind of the ups and downs of the, experience of going through trial and waiting, and then actually, I mean, everything that happened before you even get to the point where you get to trial, right?
Right.
And the trial, and then it's a lot. And frankly, I find it to be shockingly alarming at just how flawed the system is, relative to whatever Matt, did, right? I mean, it's like, geez, like, it seems like people that do far worse things have a much more direct path into how they're dealt with. That's maybe, less severe. So I know this has been a really difficult and not a straight path at all. And, Matt, is still, incarcerated. I mean, it's crazy as we sit here and talk, hopefully not for long. But I don't know, share what you want to share, about, kind of what really stands out to you between, that day and now.
They took him that day, and I watched and found out why, like the rest of the state did, when there was a press conference on in the middle of the afternoon. That's how I found out what was going on with my husband. And it made no sense to me. I mean, and that all what actually happened with Matt and that whole thing, like, that's his story to tell. Back to my, like, I don't really know. I don't really follow politics. But that day, I was able to go down and pick him up. I had to bring his passport and surrender his passport. And it was during Black Lives Matter protests. And there was all kinds of protesters out in front of the courthouse. And I snuck in through the handicap entrance, and I have a mask on and a hat on. And, Matt is in his pajamas. He's in sweatpants and a Blondie t-shirt, and he comes down. So we try to sneak out the back to get to our car, and they just swarm us, and they don't know who he is. They don't know what's going on. They're just screaming and yelling and want their pound of flesh. And we get to the car, and
Who? The media?
the media,
Yeah.
media that Matt's known forever are like sitting on the dashboard of our car with cameras right in our face. And then the protesters, they're beating on our car and screaming and burning our car with cigarettes. And we're like, what do I do? I called 911 to have the police come and like get them away so we could leave. And so first time I have Matt back in my presence since the FBI takes him away, and he's just like, this is going to be bad. I'm like, it's okay. And he's like, no, I don't think you understand. This is going to be really bad. And I'm like, it's all right. He's like we're talking years. I'm like, it'll be okay. And I don't even know where that came out of me. Part of me was like, yeah, you're a blowhard sometimes. Yeah, it's not going to be that bad. But he knew that day it was going to be bad. And I was like, it's going to be okay. And we drove home like this for the next, I don't know how many months, waking up any morning in a start, like your heart just beating out of your chest, just waiting for somebody to listen to tell the story and that it's all going to be over, and just thinking this nightmare is going to end. And it wasn't ending, and it's not. And then not all of Matt's friends, a large portion of the people that Matt knew are gone, dead to us, or we're dead to them. I don't know how that goes. And at the same time, incredible people coming out of the woodwork with support and encouragement. And it was so extreme, and the good and the bad. And you're just there in the middle trying to survive. One more time, I'm super glad that neither of us were drinkers, because who knows where that could have gone. Yeah. And after a period of time, I started, it just wasn't sustainable. I started seeing a therapist. Matt was seeing a therapist. Lucas was seeing a therapist. I was seeing a therapist, and I started taking anxiety, Xanax as needed, and it stopped my heart beating out of my chest, and I was able to like not be in panic mode all the time. I was like, okay. And, looking back, what was like days that ran together into months, that ran together to like a long time, to years, like just in panic mode, that like one foot in front of the other, just surviving, brings us to summer of 21. And I build an ice plunge, and I get in this freezing tub of ice.
We'll just pause for a second.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that.
Okay.
But I just want to like put a bit of a, we could come back to Matt, but, it's interesting to me because I don't know. I'm kind of curious about what your level of just like mindset, kind of positivity, or was it a lack of knowledge, sort of a naivete? What allowed you to, obviously you're anxious and, right. And you're worried and you're scared and, but, there was some level of you, even like, I want to know, like, well, where did you get the idea for the cold plunge? What was it that had you sort of able to, like, I don't know, keep going through it all? And, on the other hand, Matt obviously knew a lot more, right? Because it was his world, right? And he was getting information that they were telling him, whatever it was. We have this, we have that, or whatever, right? And the lawyers right. And I doubt he was coming home and telling you everything, because he doesn't have the energy to do that, and he doesn't want you worrying about shit you don't need to worry about, right? But I don't know. He seemed like he was sort of handling it pretty well too. I mean, and I'm sure, behind closed doors, who knows, you would know. And even internally, I don't know how he felt, but it does seem like you guys were able to maintain some level of like sanity and like composure through all this, because it was pretty crazy.
It was really crazy.
Yeah.
And we'd both been through like tumultuousness before. I remember consciously thinking in my marriage with Matt, like, if something really bad happened, would I stand by him?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that love, honor, and obey or whatever, like in good times and bad, like, would I really?
Mm-hmm.
And when the shit hit the fan, then nothing else even entered my mind. Then yes, what? I'm here. It's going to be okay. Nothing else even entered my mind. And, a couple days later, I was like, oh, look at that. I am a good person. Look. Yeah, the occasion came and I rose and I stand by it. Did Matt and I have the perfect marriage? No, but we had a really good one. And without a shadow of a doubt, if I turned to Matt and said, I need this, he would move heaven and earth to give it to me, and vice versa. We both would do that. And I think we knew that. And I think we're in this situation. It was also, it wasn't like Matt did something to me. The world did something to us. So we rallied together, and it was us against what was happening.
Gotcha.
That's a very real part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a big distinction. Yeah.
It wasn't, yeah. I mean, Matt's guilt or innocence or whatever package people choose to believe of that, in our relationship behind our closed doors, we were fighting for what we thought was right.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference.
Yeah, and you were together on that. Yeah, big difference. Okay, so where on earth does cold plunging come into your world?
So I have a friend that forwarded me an article about people in England who are sneaking on to their neighbor's property to go into the cold bodies of water. And I'm like, where are there some cold bodies of water around here I can get into? And then start like Googling and looking. And then I find out about ice plunging. And I'm like, well, I don't have $20,000 to spend on an ice plunge. And then I'm like, oh, well, people have been doing this with the freezer. So I'm like, well, let me give it a shot. So I built one. I did it every day for 30 days. And I was off all my Xanax that I was up to 3 times a day, wanting to go back to the doctor for 4 times a day, just so my heart would stop beating out of my chest every day. Ice plunged every day for 30 days, and I was able to control that. I didn't need the medication to control that. That was powerful. I kept doing it, maybe not every day. And then within 6 months, I was off Wellbutrin. So now all of a sudden, I'm in probably the most stressful, overwhelming set of circumstances in my entire life. And I'm managing it by building my relationship with me and the ice. And that was awesome.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I've been ice plunging for a while now too, and the kids are into it also, and it's a real fascinating thing. I'm sure you know better than I do. There's a lot of science behind it, right? And you can get dopamine and all the brown right fat, this, that, right, but what's interesting to me is really more the psychological aspects of all this, which all those things play a factor in. And I get there's chemistry to all of this, biology to all of this, but I think it goes so much further than that. I mean, literally, I have my 18-year-old son telling me about what the cold plunges taught him and how it's prepared him to go off to college, right? And how it's opened up the idea of doing other hard things, including, like I was telling you yesterday or the other day, that, I'm like going to their CrossFit gym and working out with them. And he's telling me, that I should be doing the box jumps, even though I hate them, and bang my shin because, that's the stuff that's good for you, right? That nobody wants to do that. But the reason I don't want to do that is because it's hard, but hard things are good for you. And you start to get that in the ice. You get that in the cold plunge, that like, this is freaking hard, but you pop out and you feel great.
Yes.
And then you go on feeling good. you don't have the aches and pains and right bumps and bruises. And so it is healing you physically, but it's rewiring your synapses too.
100%. 100%. And I think that people underestimate how good they can feel, and that this is a tool to get there.
Yeah.
There's also a big difference between ice plunging as a novelty and ice plunging as a practice. I mean, as a novelty, it's super fun. Great.
Sure.
That's awesome.
Which is okay.
Wonderful.
It's fun.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Well,
Do it.
if you're into that.
Right.
Some
Even
people
if
think
you're
it's
not.
the farthest thing from fun.
And sometimes those people have the most profound effects afterwards because they weren't expecting any change. And then they feel the change and they're like, oh my God, what was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. But having that as a practice to turn to regulate your process on the world, to ignite that wanting to do more, be better, and realizing that you can make a profound difference in you in a really short period of time. Jump in this ice for 2 minutes and walk out and you're going to feel like a different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what else is there that you can do that?
Yeah. And so, but there are other things too, right? Like, so this is, coming back to Massage Garage. So you go on this journey,
Yes.
right? And you're getting this healing, and it's pretty remarkable, that it's literally getting you off meds, right? You have a pattern of addiction, and now all of a sudden, like, you're flirting with another one, right? That's not a healthy one.
Right.
And ice heals that, right? And then it starts to open up other things, right? I mean, sauna, other modalities, right? It starts to really open things up for you, including your business.
Including my business.
Yeah.
Right.
But you first.
100%. One thing that I always tried to teach my older boys, my older two, when they were younger was, you can't change people, and you often can't change situations. You can only change how you react to them, and you get to choose your reaction. You always get to choose your reaction. Now, we always had this over here, and sometimes you have to accept things you don't understand. And what the ice does is make you be able to accept those things you don't understand. You get in the ice, you can't change it. You just have to accept it. You have to choose how you're going to react to it. And that's going to make all of the difference. And this gives you a chance to practice that as often as you want on a huge scale.
Yeah.
Your body literally thinks it's dying on a cellular level. It thinks you're dying. So you interrupting that thought process is a huge lift. I mean, that's like, walking into a gym, you can do body weight exercises or you can lift big weights. The ice plunge is big weights when it comes to you focusing on your ability to relate to you. And that's just kind of a basic of life, that the ice plunge helps you practice and get stronger and stronger at it. So now all of a sudden you're not even in the ice and things are happening and you're like, okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It really, for me, is a mind exercise. And it's like meditation in the way that, like, once you can kind of drop into that, like, transcendent space where you can, even if it's just for a few seconds, where you're like letting go of all the chatter, where, because the ice forces it forces a lot of chatter. It's like, this hurts, that hurts, I can't do it, it's too much. There's a lot of stuff, right?
Can.
It for me, it does, right? But then, like, I can blow all that out. I can breathe it out and I can get to a spot where it goes away. And that practice is like a super healthy, like, muscle to build, that carries outside the ice, and it really, I do think it's like, it builds core strength, it builds mental toughness, it builds mental health, maybe, even more than toughness, that, you're healthy and you can handle really hard things.
And like going into a gym and looking at a variety of equipment there, you can use the ice plunge in different ways. Like on the days that I go visit Matt in prison, I'm still going to do it, and I still have to get my hair done before I leave, and I have to be on the road by 4:50 in the morning. I'm in the sauna quick, 2 minutes, get it done, get my fix, and get out, get going. Other times when I have
In the cold.
Yeah, what did I say?
Sauna, yeah.
Oh, in the cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the ice. You know, to reset, to get to my ground zero for the day. But other times when like I just want to kick the crap out of myself, like doing a CrossFit workout, I'm going to go in there and see how long I physically possibly can stay in here and then get out and deal with the ramifications. Because the rewarming process is its own challenge.
Yeah.
And then nobody really talks about the discomfort of the rewarming process, and it's its own level of goodness.
Yeah. So as a good segue, I want to make sure as we are going to run out of time here. So you are one of our grow experts.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're doing your first month is heat and cold, and you're actually the first guest of our grow experts on the podcast. So for the listeners, we'll show you more about our greenhouse concept, which we now open in the Short North. Part of what we're offering to our residents is a program called Grow, where every month we're bringing in experts like Kate to share a modality with our community that we believe collectively over the 12-month program has the ability to make transformative changes in your life. And they're all very simple things that in our community you have access to. So we have cold plunges, we have saunas, but there are also things that you can do outside of our community too. When you leave, you can take them with you. So it might mean you get in a cold shower or, find other ways to sweat. But hopefully these are things that you can really incorporate into your life. So your first month is cold and heat.
Yes.
You shared a little bit about, both. And then your second month is, remind me what we're calling it, nature
and natural light.
Nature and natural light. So, and these are all things that are, based in scientific research, the importance of being in nature, getting your face in the sun, getting exposed to the natural light. But yeah, share a little bit about kind of what you're doing with us at Grow.
So these things are all based scientific, and you can listen to a Huberman podcast about all of these things and like the high level things that you learn in a lab. Also, all of these, both of the 2 months, the nature, natural light, hot and cold, are all things that all tools that primitive man had to regulate his system. I mean, getting cold and hot is something that our body is designed to do. It's only since we've been living in climate controlled environments that we seek it out because it's a muscle our body's meant to exercise. Nature and natural light helps our circadian rhythm be on track, which affects like your sleep habits, your nutrition habits, and because of the unnatural light that we do, that's what throws off our circadian rhythms. Also, just the evidence of nature. You'll hear so many people, there's lots of jokes about once you get older and you start watching birds. And people will say, oh, I hear birds and it's just so calming. Well, birds only sing when they feel safe. Primitive man would know, oh, the birds are singing, we're safe. There's no predators around. So deep in us, somewhere, our system's like, oh, the birds are singing, we're safe. So those are the basics of life that existed before any of the rest of this existed. And if we can tap into that basicness in us, we can carry it wherever we go.
Yeah. It's interesting. I am excited about this program for many reasons. And one of which is really what you just said, which is that we use the word transformation. We say Greenhouse's main core philosophies is about nature, well-being, and transformation. And what we're trying to do is simulate an environment in an urban setting that is inspired by nature and provide all of these amenities and access to treatment rooms and things that, allow for your well-being to be improved. But really, ultimately, what we're hoping for is transformation. And that can mean like just moving somewhere forward, shifting in some way. But what I'm excited about is that you just touched on is it can be really simple, small things that are like been around forever, right? It's just not, we're not talking about biohacking and peptides and, right, all the scientific like woo-woo stuff, which I love too. I love it,
Me
right?
too.
I'm into it all,
Yep.
right? But we sometimes make this all way more complicated than it needs to be. And if you can stick your face in the sun for 10 minutes before you start your day, you know, if you can allow yourself to sit in a cold body of water or a cold shower for a couple of minutes, you know, and the other things, you know, can you sit still and practice some form of mindfulness? Can you, you know, focus on your relationships? Can you get into nature? Can you learn how to breathe, right? I mean, these are all basic things that don't require a lot of time or a lot of money, and collectively they are transformative. But we've gotten away from that. You know, we've gone to medicine, right? We've gone to, you know, and some of it's, you know, there and helpful and, you know, to each his own, right? But like, I think we could do the basic blocking and tackling first and see how that works.
We seem to have been sold a bill of goods that in some place in life there's a line and you're going to work and you're going to get over that line and everything's going to be easy. It's a lie. There is no line. And this quest for happiness leads us down all these crazy places. But if we just look for things to have meaning, when you're standing outside, when I'm walking from the parking garage here and I could hear the train and I could hear a cardinal, I could hear a wren. I heard another bird that I didn't know. I pulled out my phone and looked it up. The walk from my parking garage to the leasing office here to come here was meaningful because I was like, oh, look at these things that are here. My house is only 4 miles from here and there's a different bird that exists here than exists there. And it felt good.
Yeah. Because you're present.
Because you're present.
Yeah.
It's just simple. There's
Yeah.
meaning. Finding
Yeah.
meaning in this, in the mundane things of life.
Yeah.
Making what's hard today can become mundane tomorrow. And then it grows and grows and grows until you're doing all this big stuff. It's just part of being. And your life is so much fuller of meaningful moments.
Yeah.
And as you change in that way, you change everyone around you in that way.
Yeah.
And how awesome is that?
It's awesome. And yeah, gratitude is another one of those months. And that's what I hear when, you know, I hear you talking about, you know, being present and just being appreciative and grateful for what's here. And I think, you know, listen, you've done a pretty awesome job of living that. And I've really seen it. And it's been inspiring, and it's been an honor just to like know you and be with you in some small way during this time in your life, and watching you thrive. I mean, it's, you know, life is really funny and weird, right? But like, you know, people say these kinds of things, right? They talk about how you're going to be better off. And I say it all the time. It's all there for our benefit, right? But fuck, sometimes you just like want a break, and you didn't get one, and yet you have like thrived. I mean, Katie and I talk about it. It's like, geez, like you're a freaking badass. I mean, really, like you keep your head up. You are positive. You're a great mom. You've grown a killer business. You're doing cool shit. And, you know, Matt's coming home soon. You know, and you got your whole life ahead of you, and you're in many ways going to be way ahead as a result.
I want to bring this to light because this is very real. There's no other set of circumstances that could happen that would lead me to where I am right now from where I was. If Matt would have died, it would have been different. If Matt would have been sick, it would have been different. Matt's been gone now for over a year, and every single day I get an email in the morning telling me how to be grateful, how to be thankful, that I am doing great, that he is here and he loves me, that he supports me. He is the greatest hype man, inspiration every day. I feel like this man has sacrificed his life so that I can become what I was meant to become. I never would have taken money away from the family and sunk it into a dream that I had of being a business, but I had to because I had to support our family. And look, it worked.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have done it if I didn't have somebody there behind the scenes supporting me every step of the way. And he did. He does. And it makes a huge difference. His life has been sacrificed so that I can become me. And that is not lost on me.
Yeah.
And that's what brings us closer and closer together, even though physically we are further apart.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait for him to come home. He can't wait to be home. And we also have not let us escape that we are learning every day how to be strong in this moment, how to help each other in this moment, how to thank the universe, and like survive something that we never even thought we could survive. But here we are, and we lick our heads up around and we're making it.
Yeah. And you know, just through you, and corresponding a little bit with Matt, like, boy, he's a badass too, because, you know, he's not, like in some country club, you know, situation, which is also, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think anybody listens to this podcast, but like total bullshit. It's ridiculous. But he is, you know, in a situation that isn't pleasant by any means, yet has fully embodied just, you know, being in this sort of learner's mindset and being there for you. And, you know,
his ice plunge practice has helped him so much where he is. Matt's not a flyer. He always has to take meds to fly. You know what? They don't give you meds when you're in prison and they fly you. In fact, they handcuffed you to an old man named Smokey who talks about how he stabbed people to death. And he's like, what am I going to do? He's like, I just went back to getting in the ice and how the ice made me feel and how I stayed center and how you were there with me and I could hear your voice. And that's what kept me from fight or flight in that time, in that moment. He's like, I didn't know what I was going to do, but the ice carried him through. Luckily, we had these tools before he had to go away. Luckily, we had this in place and he draws on it all the time.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't know, this is just sort of my fallback, but like, I don't think it's luck. You know, I think it's in some way all been there to support you, you know, and I think even though you wouldn't wish it upon anybody and you wouldn't want to repeat it, it will serve you. It already has.
It already has. We're both better people for this world because of it. And the world's better because of that.
Yeah. And that's true. And we can end there. You know, I think what you're doing, and this is the beauty of it all, is serving so many people. I mean, I know you know it, you see it, people come, they cry, they bring their moms, their parents, their, you know, their kids, like you're spreading, you know, yourself, your love, your healing now, and it's infectious and it's, you know, spreading, and that's what we need more of.
It's beautiful to see.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks, Kate.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for taking
me.
the time and for just what you're doing and being a part of Greenhouse and Grow. And
thanks for making me an expert.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Gravity Podcast. Please subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about the entire Gravity Project, please go to gravityproject.com. Please check out the podcast on Instagram at The Gravity Podcast. Music heard of the show is provided courtesy of Kyle Lamoro and Oliver Oak.